House, where President Trump says he's looking for ways to curb gun violence. The president says some teachers should be armed in the classroom, concealed firearms for only the best, as he put it, and that other ideas for our classrooms are coming. Today, we'll take you to a school where there already are guns hidden in safes around the building so trained staffers can access them.
I understand that you're concerned. I understand that you don't like us having a firearm in the school building. However, on the flip side, we will protect your child.
Sides of that argument ahead, plus tracking the special counsel's Russia investigation. Word of a former Trump campaign advisor meeting with Robert Mueller's team. And a new question about whether the president's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, tried to cut a secret deal with a banker. Let's get to it.
Breaking news. Shepard Smith reporting live from the Fox News deck.
And first from the Fox News deck, the president on guns. According to his spokesman, he's in a listening phase, but the president says he supports the idea of raising the minimum age to buy a gun.
I say that it should all be at 21. But we're not really talking about money. We're talking about common sense. And it's a great thing. And the NRA will back it. I really feel very confident. The NRA will back it, and so will Congress, and so will the Senate.
Not a proposal, but a discussion. The NRA so far is against it. Yesterday, a spokeswoman released a statement that reads in part legislative proposals that prevent law-abiding adults aged 18 to 20 years old from acquiring rifles and shotguns, effectively prohibits them from purchasing any firearm, thus depriving them of their constitutional right to self-protection. Representatives with the NRA tell Fox News their position has not changed since yesterday, despite what the president said. Again, discussion, not a formal proposal. Moments ago, the president's spokesman, Raj Shah, said active shooter drills should be renamed because that label scares children. He suggests call active shooter drills safety drills. In addition, the president says he supports allowing teachers to be armed in school. More specifically, teachers and other staff members who have a military or law enforcement background or had special training. 20%, he suggested on Twitter, in case, as he wrote, a savage sicko came to school with bad intentions. Attacks would end, he wrote in all caps.
We have to harden our schools, not soften them up. A gun-free zone to a killer or somebody that wants to be a killer, that's like going in for the ice cream. That's like, here I am, take me.
Going in for the ice cream. On the heels of the massacre in Parkland, Florida, allow teachers and others in schools to be armed and the attacks would end. That from the president. The NRA has long advocated this. The president tweeted today, folks at the NRA are great people and great American patriots. They love our people and will do the right thing. Make America great again. An audit shows the NRA gave $30 million to the Trump campaign, more than it gave to all politicians combined during the 2008 and 2012 presidential election cycles. The chief White House correspondent, John Roberts, is live on the North Lawn. John?
And, Shep, we watched that entire meeting that the president had today with state and local officials, the attorneys general of Indiana and Florida, as well as some other people. The mayor of Parkland was there as well. And the president really being forceful on this idea that schools are soft targets, that the idea of gun-free zones is, as the president put it, quote, nonsense, and that things need to change, and that he believes, and he said this repeatedly, he probably spent 15 minutes or more in total on this issue. The way to address it is, as you said, ensure that certain qualified individuals who are on the school staff, now they could be teachers, they could be administrative staff, he even said yesterday they could be janitors, are licensed to carry a concealed weapon and trained how to use it in an aggressive situation where you'd have to be defending against a shooter. Listen to what the president said.
I think a concealed permit for having teachers and letting people know that there are people in the building with guns. You won't have, in my opinion, you won't have these shootings because these people are cowards. They're not going to walk into a school if 20% of the teachers have guns. It may be 10%, it may be 40%.
And that kind of echoes the president's position, at least, with what Wayne Lapierre, the CEO of the National Rifle Association, said today at CPAC, in reiterating that he believes that one of the best ways to stop a bad person with a gun is to have a good person with a gun. Now, if you were to try to get this broadly in schools across America, because the president said maybe you could have 20% of school personnel or teachers armed, that would be nearly 700 or more, maybe even more than 700,000 people. And if you're talking about giving them bonuses to carry weapons and do the training, how you would pay for that. And then, Shep, there's also the reaction to all of this, which so far has been overwhelmingly negative. There are many people in this country who believe the last thing that you need to address school shootings is to put more weapons in schools. So I asked the acting press secretary, Ross Shaw, about that a few minutes ago. Listen here. In order for something like that to be effective, you'd have to get buy-in from many, many school boards across this country. And so far, much of the reaction that we've seen to this idea has been negative. Does the president expect that he can get enough buy-in in order to send a signal to potential shooters out there that this is a hardened facility?
There are a lot of individuals, leaders in Congress. The NRA has been supportive of this idea. The notion that trained individuals who work within schools that have firearms and can serve as a deterrent, we think could keep a lot of schools and a lot of communities safe.
You know, there are a handful of schools across the nation, Shep, in which there are certain personnel who do have weapons in the school. Of course, a lot of schools have what are called resource officers who are armed as well. And I know that some local law enforcement, sheriffs, local police departments have offered training to teachers who want to carry a weapon to school. But so far, it's a very, very small percentage of educational facilities that have this, Shep. What the president is talking about is much larger scale up than that. Shep?
Ross Shaw said this is a listening phase. Did the president mention anything else that he thinks might help with guns besides, arming some of the teachers?
Yeah, well, he talked about a number of things. You pointed out raising the age. In fact, the president sort of laid out where he stands on all of this in a tweet this morning where he said, quote, I will be strongly pushing comprehensive background checks with an emphasis on mental health, raise age to 21, and end sale of bump stocks. Congress is in a mood to finally do something on this issue. Adding the caveat there at the end, I hope. Well, his benefactors at the NRA, and you pointed out the amount of money that they gave to the Trump campaign in the 2016 election, Shep, are not in a mood to raise the minimum age. I talked with Jennifer Baker, spokeswoman for the NRA. I said, has anything changed with your position since you put out a statement about this yesterday? She said, no, we stand firmly opposed to raising the age. Here's part of the statement that they put out yesterday saying, quote, passing a law that makes it illegal for a 20-year-old to purchase a shotgun for hunting or an adult single mother from purchasing the most effective self-defense rifle on the market punishes law-abiding citizens for the evil acts of criminals. Now, it may be that the president can talk the leadership of the NRA into this. The president mentioned that he talked with Chris Cox, who is the leader of the political wing of the NRA, over the weekend. But so far, the NRA is sticking by its position, Shep, that it is opposed to any rise in the age. And just to let you know, on the federal level, to buy a handgun, you have to be 21, 18 to buy a long gun. But then there's a patchwork of regulations across the states as well. In some states, like Massachusetts, you only have to be 15 with your parents' consent to possess a long rifle, and that would include an assault rifle, Shep. So the president may find himself in a position of advocacy on this more than anything. It may not be possible to change the federal laws in any kind of effective way that would create a national standard.
Shep? It was quite a thing to hear a president advocating that. It was interesting to hear Ross Shaw talk about security clearances. The chief of staff has said, if we started to get your security clearance back in June of last year or before, and you don't have it yet, then you got to get off. You got to get off the classified list, and that's supposed to happen tomorrow. But Ross Shaw won't talk much about it. Wouldn't give us numbers.
No, and that memo was put out by John Kelly a week ago, saying that anybody whose clearance was submitted prior to or by June 1st would have their interim clearance, as it's called, revoked. Didn't necessarily say that they would lose their job, but for people who deal with classified information, if you can't read classified information or you can't handle it, you can't very effectively do their job. But Ross Shaw not even going down the road of how many people this would affect tomorrow when it takes hold. Listen here.
I can't get into the specifics regarding individual security clearances or numbers or kind of what you're asking me, but I can say, the memo did outline a series of reforms that, in the wake of the situation involving Rob Porter, that we can do to ensure that the security clearance process is tightened up, interim clearances are tightened up. That's actually some of these things the Chief of Staff had taken action on months ago, but these are steps that are going to apply to all White House officials.
And again, Shep, we don't know the exact number of individuals, but we're led to believe that it's somewhere between 10 and 30 who are at risk of losing their interim clearance. One person who's not at risk of losing interim clearance, at least not presently, is Jared Kushner. We understand that because he had to amend his SF-86 application form for security clearance a number of times because there were some omissions in his first couple of go-arounds, that wasn't submitted until after June 1st. But don't forget, in his 5-page memorandum, the Chief of Staff, John Kelly, said that he would revisit this on a monthly basis. So it may be, Shep, that if Jared Kushner does not get his full security clearance, and we don't know what phase of the process that's in right now because they're very tight-lipped about this, he may not be out of the woods. Shep?
That's a new turn. John Roberts. Fascinating. Thank you. Remember the context on this, because context is important. Jared Kushner submitted his application, his FS-86 as they call it, and did not include 100 contacts with foreigners. And then later had to go back and include them, but that later he did not include the meeting in Trump Tower with the Russian lawyer and the Russian translator. He didn't include that. So that was another amendment to this thing, and that took him past June. So Jared Kushner's good to go. Let's bring in Elena Treen, reporter for Axios. It was widely thought at the beginning that when he said anybody who started planning this before June or anybody who started the process before June, it was widely believed that that would include Jared Kushner, but now we know because of the revisions in his file, it won't include him.
That's exactly right. And essentially, Jared Kushner has been very key to the White House, especially when you look at the Middle East peace negotiations that they're trying to work through now. And something like losing your access to that classified information could definitely affect him. But from the start, ever since John Kelly put forth this memo to clear up and tighten some of those clearances and who has access to classified information, of course, in the fallout of what happened with Rob Porter, they consistently said Jared Kushner would not be affected in this. Sarah Sanders said it. Raj Shah said it today.
But we really didn't know why then, right? We didn't know how they were going to make it such that he wouldn't be affected. How did they inform you of this reason?
Inform me of the reason that
how did everybody learn? Here's why Jared Kushner's not going to be affected. Because at the beginning, when he filled out his thing, he left off more than 100 contacts with foreigners that were supposed to be there. And an omission for most people when you fill out an FS-86 can be a crime, punishable by prison. Not in this case, apparently, but it can be, right?
Right. No, exactly. I think that what happened here was there's a lot that had to be revised, sent back. We saw this initially with the Trump Tower meeting. Originally, a lot of foreign entities weren't included on his list that he had submitted. Then he had to resubmit it. Following that meeting, there were more people he had to add. And I think that is what the White House is saying that they're looking to right now, that the number of times that Jared Kushner has sent in something like this to inform them who his contacts have been are showing as evidence for them to say he's okay right now. He can still have access to the information that he needs to do his job. What's
the Axios reporting on the president's idea, which had long been the NRA's idea, of arming some teachers, some administrators, and I think he mentioned a janitor, up to 40% of them, ones who were trained, and then, as the president put it, the attacks would stop?
Well, as we've seen, he's brought forth this idea a couple times now. He's not only doubled down on it, he's tripled, quadrupled down on this idea of arming teachers. It's been pretty unpopular with people around the country from what we've seen. Others think, Trump says this now, he might say this and push for this. It's unclear whether something like this would actually happen. Raj Shah said today that they're really just in the listening phase. They're not pushing any real legislation right now. But the idea that teachers could be armed, bringing more guns into a school rather than trying to get rid of more guns and things like that, I think has really disturbed some teachers from our reporting. For the White House, they haven't really come for any policy yet on that, but Trump is sticking by that statement.
So this is just, for now, this is listening and discussing. It has no real attachment to reality, though, and no suggestion that it would.
Not yet. Some of the other things he has may lead to that. I think probably more so than the idea of arming teachers. But you're exactly right. There's no real policy attachment yet that they've been looking at.
Elena Treen, Axios. Good of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Shep.
One of President Trump's former campaign advisors reportedly meeting with the special counsel today. That advisor recently said some of the president's staffers are lying about their contacts with the Russians. There's also word Robert Mueller is looking at millions of dollars in loans to a former Trump campaign chairman. That's next. Now, the special counsel running the Russia investigation is looking into whether President Trump's former campaign chairman promised a White House job to a banker in exchange for millions in home loans. Paul Manafort already faced charges including money laundering and conspiracy. Now, according to multiple reports, the special counsel and federal prosecutors are also investigating Paul Manafort's dealings with a man named Steve Kalk. He's a bank executive in Chicago. A couple of years ago, Steve Kalk was part of then candidate Trump's economic advisory panel, though he did not get a job in the White House. The Wall Street Journal reports a spokesman for Paul Manafort said he doesn't comment on rumors. Fox News and the Wall Street Journal share common ownership. Also, the banker has not commented on this latest reporting, but he has said in the past that the loans were not related to his work with the campaign. Meantime, one of President Trump's earliest campaign advisors is reportedly meeting with the special counsel's office today. That advisor has accused top Trump officials, including the vice president, of lying about contacts with Russians during the campaign. Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, is live on Capitol Hill. Tell us about this former advisor.
Well, Shep, Sam Nunberg worked for Mr. Trump from 2011 until August 2015, a year before the presidential election. So one line of questioning could explore Mr. Trump's business dealings in Russia, though the special counsel's office is not commenting on the interview or its substance. Nunberg is important because he was let go from the president's team, in August of 2015 after a media report about racially charged posts on his Facebook page. Nunberg is also prominent in that Michael Wolff book, Fire and Fury, about the administration's first months that the White House calls trash and fantasy. And this week on another network, Nunberg took aim at presidential advisor Kellyanne Conway, the vice president Mike Pence, as well as the former campaign chairman Paul Manafort, saying they absolutely met with Russian officials.
I have never met Paul Manafort, and I respect him. It doesn't mean I have to respect Kellyanne or the vice president. Yeah, they were all lying.
Nunberg worked closely with strategist Steve Bannon, who also talked to the special counsel after he left the White House in a rather dramatic fashion. Shep.
We're also learning more about the special counsel's case against Paul Manafort.
Well, the document remains under seal. We talked about it yesterday, but a source close to the matter tells Fox they believe the new charge relates to bank fraud, and as a result, the special counsel will likely seek to change or increase Manafort's bail. Manafort was already charged with money laundering last year, and his team says the allegations are unfounded. The allegations also center on a number of his properties, and there was more back and forth today over the value of those properties because they are being used as collateral in the court case. The judge here in Washington has rejected the current valuations, but the same judge has also been criticized by those close to Manafort, for keeping so many of the court records under seal, as she has also in this most recent case. Shep.
Catherine Herridge in D.C. Thanks, Kat.
You're welcome.
More on the Russia investigation after a quick commercial, including the former campaign advisor who's reportedly meeting with the special counsel today. I'll hear from the Real Clear Politics associate editor A.B. Stoddard, who says this guy could have information about the president's trip to Russia for the Miss Universe pageant. That's coming up. More now on the Russia investigation, including word that one of the president's earliest campaign advisors is meeting today with the special counsel's investigators. Let's bring in A.B. Stoddard, associate editor and columnist at Real Clear Politics, also the host of No Labels Radio on Sirius XM. Hello, my friend.
Hi, Shep.
Where is this now? We talk about peeling an onion or licks to the center of the Tootsie Roll Pop. They go around the outside to try to get to the middle.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are reports that Sam Nunberg has been told that he is not a target in any way, but that the special counsel is interested in talking to him. And, you know, the special counsel has not been leaking, but sometimes lawyers to these witnesses have let people in the press know what the line of questioning amounted to. There is some reporting that Sam Nunberg, who has been with Donald Trump, was with Donald Trump for many years, 5 pivotal years between 2011 and 2016, close to the president as he was trying to build a premise for his candidacy. Nunberg spent most of 2013 listening to thousands of hours of talk radio trying to come up with a message that Donald Trump could use to appeal to the Republican base in a presidential run. He was very close to him, and they're reportedly looking at this trip to Moscow for the Miss Universe pageant in 2013 when then Donald Trump wondered aloud on Twitter whether Vladimir Putin would attend, whether or not they would become best friends. He boasted that many of the oligarchs were there at the pageant. And so I think that they might be looking to Sam Nunberg to shed more light on what kind of contacts with oligarchs or Russian officials were made at that pageant.
Oh, I see. And then do you offer a plea deal? Is that the thinking, or how does this work?
Well, fortunately, Shep, I haven't been called before Special Counsel Mueller, so I don't know how it works. But because he's not a target, they're asking him for information. They expect him to be forthcoming and have told him that the only thing that he could be legally liable for would be lying to the FBI.
The other thing that they seem to be working on is these loans to Paul Manafort, kind of on a separate track. But it sounds like what they're investigating is whether Paul Manafort got all these millions and millions of dollars in loans, which happened immediately after he was out of the White House. Like, he set up a new LLC, and then he got these big blocks of money, a few million here and a few million there, all from this one bank in Chicago. And not a big, massive bank with billions of dollars, but a fairly small bank. Like, a lot of their percentage of their money came to him, and now they say, did you get that because that guy got promised a job in the White House?
Right. The reporting is that this bank head, Stephen Kalk, was looking to be Secretary of the Army and was potentially providing those loans to Paul Manafort, who has no end of legal infractions or law breaking as Mueller is turning up after the election, perhaps in exchange for a job that Manafort could help him get the Secretary of the Army position in a Trump administration. There are so many new wrinkles in the case that Mueller is amassing against Manafort almost on a regular basis. And obviously the speculation last week, they came up with a filing for the court about bank fraud, but there wasn't an exact charge filed. And then there was a sealed charge now that's pending, perhaps from the fact that former deputy campaign advisor Rick Gates, who worked closely with Manafort, might have flipped on him. And now this new information about perhaps this quid pro quo with Stephen Kalk at the bank in Chicago. It is clear that Mueller is trying to build pressure on Manafort to either he's going to slap him with a whole bunch of infractions, or he is going to try to flip him to provide information closer to President Trump than Manafort has thus far provided.
Very interesting, AB. Thank you for that. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you.
New details from Florida about the moments that police were trying to catch the school shooting suspect after the attack, and what FBI officials now say about their own failure to act on a tip before that attack. Plus, you heard how President Trump is pushing to arm trained teachers with guns. All attacks would stop, he wrote. We'll take you to a school where there are guns in school, around the school in safes, and our correspondent will show you how it works. That's after the commercial break. During the commercial break, bottom of the hour headlines just 2 minutes away. Stay with us. The acting FBI director is not giving a reason for how or why the agency failed to act on a tip about the Florida shooting suspect. At an unrelated news conference today, David Bowditch admitted that the proper procedures were in place, but that the FBI did not follow them.
There was a mistake made. We know that. But it is our job to make sure that we do everything in our power to ensure that does not happen again. I'm not making excuses, because what happened was a tragedy, truly a tragedy.
Meantime, the police who were trying to catch the suspect during the shooting say a delay in the school's security camera slowed them down. It was 20 minutes behind and nobody told them. That's what the Coral Springs police chief told the South Florida Sun-Sentinel newspaper. He said the video showed the suspect was still in the building when he had actually gone. It was as if the DVR had been paused and they were 20 minutes behind. But the police chief said the camera delay did not slow down the response. to the injured students and teachers. Our Steve Harrigan is live again at the scene in Parkland, Florida. Steve?
Shepard, more details emerging in those chaotic minutes after the shooting began last week, and the videotape security system may have contributed to some confusion. Apparently, those tapes were on delay by 20 minutes, creating some confusion for some of the first responding officers who were concerned that the shooter might still have been in the building on the 3rd floor, taking off his vest, dropping his weapon, when, as a matter of fact, the shooter had already left that building. Questions being raised also about the performance of the single security officer who was here at this 45-acre school center. He was the only one there. He was armed, and he did not fire a single shot. So questions being raised whether or not the security officer actually made contact with the shooter. Shepard.
I understand that teachers and faculty are coming back to the building tomorrow?
The teachers come back tomorrow. The students come back for a half day on Tuesday. Some things, though, will be different. Building 12, that's where the 900 freshmen were taught. That's where the shooting took place. That will still be closed. And they've come up with a plan for Florida lawmakers to actually tear down that building and rebuild it at a cost of $28 million. That would include a $500,000 for a memorial. One more thing will be different also next week in Broward County schools. The security officers who guard those schools will now be carrying rifles. Shepard.
Steve Harrigan in Broward County at the school. Thank you. As I reported earlier, President Trump says he supports arming teachers and other school officials, including janitors, with guns, as many as 20 to 40% of them, as long as they have military or special training. He says they'd be experts and could immediately fire if, as he put it, a savage sicko came to school with bad intentions. Attacks would end, he tweeted in all caps. Some critics say armed teachers might actually make classrooms more dangerous, and they're questioning how it helps prevent school shootings. In Ohio, some school districts already are putting the idea of sorts to the test. Our Matt Fenn went to Sydney Middle School, about 70 miles north and west of Columbus, to see what they're doing. Matt?
Shep, at these schools, there is a confidential team of teachers and staff that are trained to fire back in the event of an active shooter. It's called an armed response team. These schools conceal the guns by hiding them in safes throughout the campus, and only members of this armed response team or active response team can open those safes. Each person is vetted by the district, must have a license to carry, and goes through what the district calls rigorous monthly training, equivalent to a police officer. The Shelby County Sheriff, who helped develop a plan, said he realized his schools were unprepared while watching the Sandy Hook tragedy unfold. Some of the students we talked to seem to agree with their teachers being armed.
People can complain about it now, but if there was a shooter in the school and someone stopped him, I don't think that there would be any complaints.
The program is not without controversy. Some members of the teachers union and the police union in these districts opposed arming teachers, and there are parents against it. Even the police chief is concerned more people with guns on scene can confuse first responders. Here's what they had to say.
There's a lot of pressure on teachers already, and we got to get these kids into college, get them ready, prepared for life.
We take away a possibility of 1 or 2 people with guns to 6 or 7 people with guns without us having assurance who's the good guy or bad guy.
The state of Ohio has set aside some taxpayer dollars to assist schools that want to enact plans similar to these. Shep.
Matt Fenn in Chicago, thanks. The Justice Department cracking down on crimes against the country's senior citizens. That's according to the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. He announced today that the department has charged more than 200 people with scamming elderly Americans out of more than $500 million. Anita Vogel has the news. She's live with us. Hey, Anita.
Well, hi there, Shep. It is the largest coordinated sweep of elder fraud cases in history. We're talking about scam artists who preyed on and targeted seniors through the mail with fake investment plans and even identity theft. Before the cameras today, one woman said she and her husband were both driving hundreds of miles each day for cancer treatments when she got word she had won a prize, expensive jewelry. All she had to do was buy some vitamins to claim the prize. In the end, all of the jewelry turned out to be fake.
I would go to bed at night asking God, how could I pay for the gas for us to drive my husband and I to radiation therapy in the mornings.
The loss of the pain, the suffering these criminals inflict on our good and trusting seniors must never be tolerated.
Now, Jeff Sessions went on to say this is just the beginning. He'll be using the full weight of the Justice Department to prosecute and punish these criminals. And he says, really, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Shep?
And not just limited to the United States, huh, Anita?
Oh, that's right, Shepard. The cases span the globe, and there was cooperation from international law enforcement agencies. Take a look at this map. This is just one example, one single fraud scheme. The green shows the countries with the U.S. victims, and the red shows where there was activity of false schemes. Most of the cases were in the United States and Canada, but also as far away as Australia. The criminals used U.S. mail and U.S. addresses to make their schemes seem more legitimate. And sadly, Shep, while most of the cases involve actual fraudulent organizations, other cases involved relatives or guardians of the seniors. Shep, back to you.
Anita Vogel live for us. Anita, thank you. Republicans in Pennsylvania are now fighting back, as they put it, against a new congressional map, the one that gets rid of districts with nicknames like Goofy Kicking Donald Duck. We'll have more on the legal battle with a whole lot at stake ahead of the 2018 midterm elections. That's coming.